Hi, Thomas Brinsko here, publisher of BIC Magazine and BICmagazine.com. When it comes to electricity, most experts I follow believe we're entering into an era of increased demand without an appropriate responding supply shift. Because over the last 15 years or so, the United States electricity demand has remained flat, but economic growth has gone up, and that reflects a transition from a manufacturing economy to a service economy. But this trend is set to reverse in a big way, and the U.S. electricity industry is not really ready for it. An era of increasing electrical demand has arrived, and it's a hard fact that new power infrastructure takes 5 to 10 years, and the industry is now only starting to plan for that growth. Wood Mackenzie released a Horizon report last week entitled Gridlock: The Demand Dilemma. I read a lot of energy trend material, and this is excellent summary material. I consider it a must-read if you want to look at the U.S. electric supply and demand forecast. It outlines 3 demand drivers and 3 supply constraints for electricity. The first driver is data centers, which are huge consumers of electricity. Data centers accounted for 4 to 5% of all U.S. electricity consumption in 2023. But the growth from data centers is expected to be 10 to 20% per year through 2030. Good business to be in. Wood Mackenzie identified 51 gigawatts of new data center capacity announcements just since January of 23. And even they say this is probably only a sample of total project development. The second driver will be manufacturing. Now, manufacturing construction spending in 23 was triple the average of the last decade, due in large part to the CHIPS Act and in the Inflation Reduction Act. Both subsidize semiconductor, batteries, and solar manufacturing. These laws make these energy-intensive industries more competitive with imports, especially those with tariffs. The third driver is the wider electrification of the economy. If you followed me for a while, you know I'm not really a proponent of this, but it's a real deal. The electrification of all the heating and electric cars are driving some U.S. electricity demand growth, at least until the policies might change. The 3 major supply constraints start with the slow pace which interconnections are completed and transmission capacity is added to the grid. Wood Mackenzie suggests that the current system can really only take about 2% growth per year to build out the interconnections and the transmission. The second constraint is the scale of planned coal retirement. In theory, new plants need to be built not just to meet demand growth, but to replace retiring coal plants. But there's a precedent for the opposite. Some data centers are being planned to be built at a location where the retiring coal plant is to leverage that coal plant's connection to the grid. If power users instead of new power plants are built at these interconnection sites, it's going to accelerate the growing demand-supply imbalance. The third constraint is the availability of the transformers and breaker equipment needed to interconnect new plants with the large loads. Wood Mackenzie says they're now seeing lead times averaging 3 years for particularly large transformers, and in some cases, suppliers are quoting lead times as long as 5 years. The electricity industry must provide the power necessary to both boost economic growth and simultaneously protect U.S. national security interests. Look what's going on in Cuba right now. In my opinion, decarbonizing the power sector to eliminate climate change as a third policy imperative puts too much strain on the first 2, growth and security. I'd put my priorities there. Because if utilities, along with their regulators, don't move quickly enough to address growth and security, they're going to find themselves in the crosshairs of politicians and customers, both the customers wanting to connect to the system and the existing customers who don't want to pay the costs of connecting a new load. On a separate note, please get out and vote soon. Voting has begun in many states already. Join me in praying for our country. Thank you for reading BIC, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to BICmagazine.com and click the subscribe link. And thanks for giving us a follow on social media. I hope to see you again soon.